This video was made possible by Fabulous. This is Tommy Tuberville, a Republican member of Congress, whose activities in the securities market have raised some eyebrows. See, in the first 5 months of his position as Senator of Alabama, he sold and bought stocks worth over $1 million. This includes $80,000 worth of stocks in Alcoa, a defense contractor company that was awarded a 5-year, $50 million contract from the US government for developing innovative, lightweighting solutions for ground combat vehicles in 2016. Alcoa also enjoys a profitable decade-long relationship with the US military. It's part of the 132 stock trades Senator Tuberville and his wife have engaged in recently. He also has around $130,000 worth of stocks in Honeywell, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and General Dynamics, defense companies which will crop up from time to time in this video. But that's not the biggest problem. After all, the United States is a free market, right? So I mean, he should be allowed to invest in these companies. Well, things get a bit tricky when you consider the fact that Senator Tuberville sits on the Armed Services Committee. These are the guys that have rule-making powers on the country's military activities. That includes the Department of Defense, military research and development, and even strategic and critical materials necessary for the common defense. So it seems there's a bit of a conflict of interest here. But it's not just him. The conflict of interest created when those making laws about military activity invest in military-related companies seems to be a bipartisan issue. Take a look at Democratic US Representative Jim Cooper. He's owned up to $65,000 worth of stock in General Electric at the end of 2020. General Electric supplies systems and tech for combat aircraft, military transport, helicopters, land vehicles, and unmanned aerial vehicles. Around $50,000 of his stock is held in a tax-favored individual retirement account, and around $15,000 worth is held in a brokerage account set up for one of his kids. All of this is done whilst chairing the Strategic Forces Subcommittee, which has jurisdiction over Department of Defense and Department of Energy policy related to strategic deterrence, strategic stability, nuclear weapons, strategic and nuclear arms control, among other things. The list goes on and on, featuring investments from US lawmakers ranging from $1,000 to $1.4 million, and 51 members of Congress as well as their spouses own anywhere from $2.3 to $5.8 million worth of stocks in companies ranked amongst the world's top 30 defense contractors. Investing in stocks from any of the 5 major global defense contractors, namely Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics, often results in a big payday. Their stock value has skyrocketed over the past 2 decades by 58%. To put that into perspective, let's look at what some of these politicians stood to gain during the longest period of war profiteering in recent US history, the Afghanistan War. But first, let me be completely honest. When researching and writing the script for this video, I was hit by an unusual desire to procrastinate. I think it's due to it taking a lot longer than usual, and thus the end goal seemed far away. But the way I got through it was by utilizing the power of habits, and I did that with Fabulous, the sponsor of this video. The Fabulous app is a digital coach that uses insights from behavioral science to develop great habits that will enable you to live the life you want and achieve the goals you have set for yourself. You'll learn to create rituals that propel you towards your goals and participate in challenges that will build motivation and awareness along the way. But what I like most about Fabulous is that it's all based on behavioral science. It breaks down scientifically proven healthy habits into very small tasks that you can easily achieve every single day, and it's 100% personalized. You choose between 2 approaches: the habit tracking, where you can pick among hundreds of recommended habits or create your own, as well as the dedicated programs that are behavior change programs designed specifically to help you achieve your well-being goals. You'll receive regular letters filled with inspiring and motivating lessons that guide your process. At the end of each letter, you will commit to positive actions for that week. Your new habits will be added to your daily routine, and they'll send you gentle nudges to stay on task. So start building your ideal daily routine today, and be sure to be one of the first 500 people to click on the link in the description to sign up for a Fabulous subscription, because then you'll get 25% off. Thank you again to Fabulous for sponsoring this video. Alright, so if you would have purchased $10,000 worth of stock and spread it evenly amongst the top 5 defense contractors in 2001, then you'd have $97,000 today. Buying $10,000 worth of stock in Lockheed Martin alone would have resulted in an investment worth $133,500 today. And if you can predict the number and size of military contracts these companies get, well, you'd be able to make a fortune. And that's exactly what these people can. And for people like this, war means business. It's the biggest reason why they're willing to risk moral scrutiny and slight public outrage for a guaranteed return on their investments. Of course, the United States is already known for its massive defense budget. Just take a look at this graph. In 2020, despite a global health crisis, the United States increased its defense budget from 2019's $732 billion to $778 billion. The US defense budget continuously dwarfs those of China, Russia, and the United Kingdom combined. After all, maintaining over 700 known bases and various black sites isn't cheap, but a huge chunk of that defense budget goes to defense contractors, and this is where things get pretty dark. Looking back at the Afghanistan war, nearly $4.4 trillion was allocated towards weapons acquisition and research and development, which are all branches that benefit private defense contractors and, in the long run, their shareholders. It all ties into the close relationship leaders from both the Democratic and Republican parties have with defense companies, and how those relationships are encouraged and legitimized. The Big Five, which include Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman, hold some of the largest stock investments from Congress, and a third of all Pentagon contracts in recent years were awarded to them. These defense companies are also frequent visitors to Capitol Hill, spending millions of dollars while lobbying the government, supporting campaigns and bidding on major contracts. Donating funds to political campaigns is where these companies exercise true influence, and it can put an aspiring lawmaker in the best position to approve the defense contractor's future bids. Most of these donations aren't even considered bribery or corruption because they're done through political action committees, or PACs, which falls under a 2010 Supreme Court ruling that allows uncapped, independent spending for political campaigns by corporations, including non-profit corporations, labor unions, and other groups under the Free Speech Clause. PACs represent businesses like Microsoft, political groups like the NRA or the Tea Party, and of course, defense contractors. During the 2018 US midterm elections, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and Lockheed Martin contributed millions to both Democratic and Republican campaigns. 20 major defense contractors contributed a total of $21 million to candidates, parties, and outside organizations via PACs. It's not too crazy to think that both companies and lawmakers have something to gain from this partnership, but that's just one of the many layers of America's military-industrial complex. Things get a little more sinister when you see how these political positions can lead to inside information that makes a company's stock that much more profitable. Take the case of House Republican Kevin Hern. He sits on the House Committee on the budget responsible for drafting budget plans for Congress and monitoring and enforcing rules surrounding spending, revenue, and the federal budget. In November of 2021, it was announced that Lockheed Martin, yes, those guys again, was awarded a $10.9 billion contract to upgrade the Air Force's F-22 aircraft. Just 3 months before the news broke, however, Kevin Hern purchased stocks in the company. And then he amped up his position again just 2 weeks before the official announcement, buying up to $100,000 worth of additional stocks. You see the same pattern of behavior from House Democrat Kathy Manning, who sits on the House Committee of Foreign Affairs. On October 22nd, 2 weeks before the announcement, she purchased up to $30,000 in Lockheed Martin stocks. What's crazier though is that it's all technically legal. If you look at the Senate Code of Official Conduct, nowhere does it explicitly ban members from buying or selling stocks from defense contractors aligned with the US government. Even federal law, which requires senators to disclose their stock transactions yearly, doesn't do much after they're disclosed. The US Senate Ethics Manual is even vaguer, stating that when a Senate member pushes for certain legislation, they are working from a place of public interest. Thus, the Senate member's financial gain is presumed to be only incidentally related, leaving a lot of wiggle room for what we see today. Though the trading activities of senators, their spouses, and children are required, the specific amount in terms of dollar transactions is not. Instead, senators are allowed to mark the range in which their investments fall. Broad ranges from 1 to 15,000 and 250 to 500,000 make it even harder to track how much they benefit from these investments. On top of that, the rate at which these transactions are reported stalls tracking efforts in terms of how fast these politicians see returns. Some report their transactions 17 months late, distorting any regulations that would raise a red flag. While it's hard to track exactly how much these politicians have gained from such practices, it was revealed that Congress members and their close families have altogether purchased more than $260 million worth of assets and, sold over $360 million worth of assets in 2021. This includes stocks in various companies where they outperformed due to alleged inside knowledge. To try and curb this extreme conflict of interest, the 2012 Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge or STOCK Act was introduced. This act attempts to shed light on Congress's investment moves and prohibits members of Congress and employees of Congress from using non-public information derived from their official positions for personal benefit and for other purposes. Also demands that members of Congress, lawmakers, and senior staff who made at least $132,500 a year in 2021 are required to report their stock trades of more than $1,000 within 30 to 45 days of the transaction. Now, while this act seems like a step in the right direction, it's not working too well. See, in 2020 and 2021, 57 members of Congress and 182 Capitol Hill staff members filed late stock trades. The act dictates that a first-time late fee of $200 should be paid, but there is no public record that confirms if these fees are ever collected or how multiple offenders are fined. There also hasn't been any confirmation on a non-public record of disclosure rule breakers. Plus, $200 seems like pennies for the members of Congress who continuously break this rule. Worse than that, however, the late fee payment procedure isn't laid out. You can't even find information on penalty payment procedures on the Office of Congressional Ethics website. Congress members are often left to figure out how and when to cash the check themselves, with no follow-up or push. Oh yeah, and the act itself allows Senate and House ethics officials to waive the fee if the offender gives a, quote, good enough reason, which is quite vague to say the least. For those suspected of insider trading, however, the penalties are even less. Most surprising, however, is that no Congress member to date has been charged with misusing privileged information for financial gain. So let me just ask the most obvious question here: what can be done? Do people find it wrong that these representatives are directly benefiting from the very companies they're meant to regulate? I mean, it certainly makes war and military activity a more appealing option, and it also leads to a continued rise in how many American taxpayers will shell out for a growing defense budget. There has been public outcry, and it seems to be making an impact, however small. Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has been against the growing call to ban Congress members from trading stocks in the past, calling the US a free market economy that Congress should be able to participate in. But after massive backlash, some even from those within the House and Senate, her tune has changed. In February, Pelosi pushed forward a plan to ban members of Congress from trading stock while holding office. Since then, several bills that seek to regulate stock trading to a certain degree are under consideration by the Senate, and the House Administration Committee is drafting one that will be put up for voting this year. In the end, constituents can sign petitions, push for bills, and demand more from those chosen to represent them, but it's a long and drawn-out process, and with the mounting pressures of everyday life, the average citizen is often left feeling powerless. But that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.